is. Okay, that's what I thought.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You back there?
Lots going on. Well, I show 11 o'clock, so we will call to order the Tuesday, September 10th meeting of the Railroad Transportation Safety District. My name is Deb Shore, and I'm serving as chair representing Lancaster County. To my far left is fellow County Commissioner Rick Vest. Next to him is James Michael Bowers representing the City Council, and it's his first meeting, so welcome. Just joining us on my far right is Sean Flowerday from the County Board, and next to me is Roy Christensen, our Vice Chair. Jane Raybold is on vacation.
Yeah, okay.
You were the former Vice Chair. As we begin this meeting of the City of Lincoln Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. The RTSD agenda and all the materials that are being considered at today's meeting were posted on the website on Thursday, August 29th, 2019. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County official government sites. In addition, on August 29th, 2019, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board located at City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the meeting agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all the materials being considered today are located on the dais, and complete copies of these materials are on file at the RTSD office at 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. Finally, in accordance with Nebraska law, the notice of the location and time of this meeting, together with a summary of the proposed budget statement, was published in the Lincoln Journal-Star newspaper on September 4th, 2019. With that, we will move to item 3, which is approval of the minutes from our previous meeting on June 3rd.
So moved. I second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or corrections? If not, call the roll, please.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Flowerday?
Abstain.
Shore?
Yes.
Best?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 4, National Rail Safety Week, which is September 22nd through the 28th.
Morning, board members. Roger Feigert, Executive Director of the RTSD, and with me this morning, I also have Deb Ashford. If I can get her to come up here and she'll say a few words. Deb is a board member of Operation Lifesaver Nebraska. She's also a presenter, and she's also a coach in that. And as we did last year, recognizing the National Rail Safety Week, and certainly the RTSD has been about safety and in reducing conflicts for a number of years. And just over the last couple of years, I have been able to interact and participate with Operation Lifesaver. Deb will say a few things about what their organization does and why the two missions of our organizations really serve one another and complement one another. So, Deb.
All right, thank you this morning very much for the proclamation for our National Rail Safety Week. I worked at Union Pacific for 37 years, and one of the things that I know is that the safety of the public is crucial. I've seen what happens when we do have incidents and fatalities. My mission at Operation Lifesaver, it's a nonprofit, we're all volunteers, is to go out and teach the public about rail safety. I just recently did a 6-day stint at the state fair. We got literally thousands of people taught. And what amazes me is the one thing that so many people aren't aware of is our emergency notification sign posted at every rail crossing. But my main thing that I want to tell you today is National Rail Safety Week goes from September 22nd through the 28th, and I'm very proud that Nebraska is going to have several proclamations. City of Lincoln and the County of Lancaster and the state of Nebraska, and hopefully Waverly, the city of Waverly. So I want to thank you very much. It puts us in the national spotlight and gives us a lot of recognition and emphasis in the news so that we can get our rail safety messages out there. Thank you, Roger, for all your help.
You're very welcome. It's a privilege to participate. So before the board today is the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District proclamation. U.S. Rail Safety Week. Whereas the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, Nebraska Railroad Transportation Safety District, the RTSD, recognizes the importance of railroad safety as across the United States a person or vehicle is hit by a train every 3 hours. And whereas in 2018, 1,101 people in the United States were killed or injured in vehicle-train collisions, and another 1,115 people were killed or injured while walking on or around railroad tracks. And whereas in 2018, 20 people in Nebraska were killed or injured in vehicle-train collisions, and another 4 people were killed or injured while walking on or around railroad tracks. And whereas Operation Lifesaver, Inc. is a nonprofit public safety education and awareness organization dedicated to reducing collisions, fatalities, and injuries on railroad tracks and at crossings. And whereas Operation Lifesaver, Inc. is collaborating with a coalition of safety advocates to promote railroad safety through the observance of U.S. Rail Safety Week during the week of September 22nd through the 28th, 2019. And whereas the RTSD was formed for the purpose of increasing public safety on railroad tracks and crossings throughout the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, and whereas the RTSD is committed to educating our community about railroad safety, as many accidents on railroad tracks and crossings are preventable, and therefore the RTSD supports the goals of Operation Lifesaver, Inc., as well as the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, Nebraska. And whereas the Railroad Transportation Safety District encourages all residents of the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, Nebraska, to educate themselves on railroad safety practices. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of the Railroad Transportation Safety District does hereby proclaim the week of September 22nd through the 28th, 2019 as U.S. Rail Safety Week.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
I would move that we approve this proclamation.
Second.
Any comments?
This is a good thing.
This is a good thing.
It is a good thing. And Deb, kudos to you. It's been a long time since we were setting out at Havelock Shops at those Operation Lifesaver meetings. But kudos to you for keeping on with it after you've retired from active service with Union Pacific to educate people. Because these days change people's lives, and ripples go on out in all their family. And what people forget is that there are live human beings at the front of those trains, and oftentimes they're powerless to prevent the train from impacting the person or vehicle that's on the tracks. And so all these education efforts are just very well placed. So thank you for continuing this work.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that Southeast Nebraska just had a train fatality this last weekend, actually.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Christensen,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We will move on to item number 5, Statement of Financial Activity. Ron, invite you forward at this time.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Rohde with the Budget Fiscal Office from the Lancaster County, And again, it's my 6th month on the job, 3 months presenting this information. So I'm proud to support Roger and the RTSD board and their accounting endeavors. With that, we'll go over the statement of financial activity. We have fiscal year 19 listed, but it's also inclusive of the 2 months of fiscal 20 so far. So the thing to keep in mind as we progress through this report is that we stopped the numbers. The figures are as of August 28, 2019. That gives us some time to put together these financial information for your review. So these are as 8/28/2019. At that time, we were 17% through the fiscal year. Fiscal year began July 1, 2019. So keep that figure in mind as we progress through the report. Again, the report is broken down into 3 areas. The first one is receipts. The second one is disbursements. And then the third area is investments. So we'll go through those very quickly here. As far as the receipts, tax receipts through August 28th were $1,765,406. Project cost reimbursements were 0 as of 8/28. Investment interest income was $19,136. Total receipts were $1,784,542, which was 35% collected with 70% of the fiscal year completed. So I think that's a good indication of the stewardship of this money. The second area is disbursements, and the first area in the disbursements is commissions, refunds to state of Nebraska. Those are at $34,712. Operating costs are at $9,179, and construction project costs are at $539,339. Total on disbursements through 8/28 was $583,230, which represents about 9% of the year spent with 70% of the year complete. Moving into the cash portion, our bank balance as of 7/31, and keep in mind Treasury reconciles that once a month after a month-end close. So that's at 7/31 was $1,915,083. Throughout the month, we had transactions that came through of $1.6 million, left us with an ending cash balance of $267,627. Also, our ending investment balance as of 8/28 was $10,093,446. Moving into the third area, investments. These are broken up into 2 areas. We have our CDs and then our money market, and our Treasury for Lancaster County manages this in good fashion. CDs amounted to about $4.4 million, and then money market was $5.53 million. So that total equates to the ending investment balance that you see in the middle portion of $10,093,446. So that's the 3 areas for the statement of financial activity for fiscal year 20. Any questions?
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to accept the statement of financial activity?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, motion is second. Call the roll, please.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6, review and consideration of fiscal year 18-19 audit. Tony.
Good morning. My name is Tony Jarina with HBE LLP, and here to present shortly the draft of the audit report that you will be seeing in final form this coming at your next board meeting. As we run through the audit report, on page 3 is basically your statement of position. And what we do is compare. We have 2 columns. One is for the current year and one is for the prior year. On page 3 shows total assets of the prior year at June 30th of $16.4 million. At the end of June 30th, 2019, it is down to $11.3 million. That is that's directly caused by the second $10 million payment that went out to the city for the South Beltway project. Prior year liabilities was $75,000. This year liabilities is $445,000, mostly due to
What page are you on, just so we can
page
follow?
3. Page 3.
Page 3 of the
Audit report.
auditor's report. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
$445,000 of accounts payable, mostly due to construction contracts that you have to be paid. So the total net position of the district as of June 30th, 2019 is about $10.9 million. On the next page is your statement of activities for the year. What is presented first on page 4 is the expenses. The prior year had $10.9 million of expenses, which included the first of the $10 million payments to the city. The current year of 2019 had expenditures of $11.7 million, which included the second of the $10 million payments. Under that are the general revenues for the year. Prior year was $5.9 million. This year is up slightly to $6.2 million. The biggest change is because of the increase in real estate taxes, which is probably due to the increase of valuation, because your rate stayed the same for these numbers here. So, in pages 8 through 12, you have the notes to the financial statements. They go into a little more detail of the numbers that are in the front of the report. When you have some time, it would be good if you review those to know where we're getting our numbers and to clarify wording and things such as that. Moving down to page 14, this is your comparison to budget for the year. Remember, this comparison is on a total cash basis. Accruals for receivables or payables have been taken out. And the actual amounts for the year, you started off with $14.2 million. To that, we added the revenues, and we had amounts that are available for appropriations of $20.3 million. And then during the year, total cash payments out was $11.3 million. After that, we have supplementary information starting on page 16, which is the schedule of account with county treasurer. After that, we have your listing of certificates of deposit. After that, your insurance coverage, and on the last supplementary page, a schedule of valuations, rates, and assessments for the year. The audit does no longer contains a qualification for financial statement preparation, because since hiring Amy Wilson, she has, as long as being a CPA, she also has experience reviewing governmental financial statements. We put in her the trust that she has reviewed these financial statements. She's quite qualified to do so. So we are taking out that qualification that we were preparing your financial statements, because the RTSD has somebody who is knowledgeable about these financial statements and can vouch for them.
Amy Wilson.
Yes. And the last page on page 23 was that qualification from the prior year. We're just required to say that this is a prior year finding, and that that status was corrected. The audit went very well. We're very happy that Amy and Roger and Ron Rody were able to help us. It went really smooth. We only have one management recommendation. During the year, or during our audit, we received a confirmation from a bank that confirmed a bank balance that was not on the RTSD's records. What we found out is that the bank set up a separate checking account to account for the interest coming off of the CDs. So we are just going to make a management recommendation saying when you take out a new CD, make sure that the bank understands not to flush out money to and make up a new bank account, just to keep the money in the CD and let it roll over to the next year.
And that correction has been made with regards to the...
Yeah, we found that. We put that money onto the RTSD's books, yes.
Okay.
Through our audit AJEs.
Questions for Tony about the financial statements? And this is not final, so
This is
just a briefing,
we
and
will
we will
probably
accept.
be giving you the final within a couple weeks.
Okay.
We were that close to getting the final out, but I do not expect any change to this financial statement at all.
Okay, so we will then approve it at our next meeting in December. All right. Seeing no questions, we'll move on. Thank you. Consideration of fiscal year 2019-20 budget.
Don't go too far. Roger Feigert, this budget that's before the board today, provided on state of Nebraska auditor-required forms, represents the same operating budget and capital budget expenditures that was approved by this board at its June 3rd, 2019 meeting. The budget has been adjusted to reflect changes in the revenue to be received with the Lancaster County final evaluation now set and the county board final levy approval. So again, this is exactly the same budget for expenditures you approved in June, but adjusted for that final valuation. Tony is here if you have any questions about the actual forms or the additional information in there. And this budget is required in the state auditor's office by the 20th of this month. So fortunately, we can send those things electronically anymore. So, any questions?
By a group today. Right, we did have a chance to look at this in detail previously. Is there a motion to approve the 2019-2020 budget?
I would move that we approve this budget.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Shore,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Flowerday.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, current budget status.
Again, Roger Feigert, I don't have that up in front. I would say, as Ron said, we're just 2 months into this year. We have an operating budget of a little over $100,000. We've spent $9,179. Under railroad improvements, while expenditures have not come through, the BNSF has sent us invoices, and we've put those in process to pay for the new crossing at 33rd and Cornhusker, 27th and Highway 2, and 48th and Highway 2. I'll have a little bit more to say. And we've also signed an additional agreement with BNSF to repair the crossing on Adams Street near 35th Street. Whether they'll get that done before winter, I'm not sure. In the construction projects, 2 expenditures, a little over $8,000 out of miscellaneous engineering. That was to pay for the reevaluation, reaffirmation of the quiet zone in North Lincoln along that corridor, done by FHU. And then $530,000, most of that going to Olson, who is our consultant for 33rd and Cornhusker. A significant amount of work and hours being expended every month as we continue to work on that project. So that's where we are on the budget to date.
Any questions regarding current budget status?
Well, those expenditures you were referring to, Roger,
Yes.
I'm looking at this form, but I see the operating expenses and then the construction projects below that. And where were those expenditures at again? Am I missing them on the form here?
Well,
We had 500,000 plus to Olson and Associates.
the
It probably would be in the fiscal 2019.
in the upper right-hand corner, there was a total there for operating of $9,179. Do you not see that? Let me,
Upper right-hand corner.
yeah, and under the column FY20 actuals.
Oh,
do
FY20
you wanna-
actual.
You want to try and get a hard copy on the Elmo, or?
I
Okay.
think I've got it up now.
Okay.
Right there.
Here it is.
Auditing and accounting and travel expenses.
Okay, so
Or is that what that is?
operating expenses, just a little over 9,000. The majority of that to date is paying for the accounting audit and the budget preparation that's been done. And then down below, is the 8,500 for the North Lincoln Quiet Zone and a little over 530 for.
It helps if I
33rd
get in the correct column. In this case, it is the right column, so anyway, thank you for clarifying.
Well, and actually, Ron and I actually removed a couple of columns to try to make it simpler, but maybe
We
we weren't there
appreciate
yet.
that.
So,
Well, so we've got a lot of work going on out there at 33rd and Cornhusker in preparation. I mean, there's a lot of pre-work to ever tearing things up and redoing that. That needs
yes,
to be
and
done.
Chris Humphrey, our project manager, is here today and will give us a detailed update of kind of the status of the project and where we are and where we're headed in a little bit.
Just so people know, a lot's being done, even though
Yes.
they can't see it at this
Yes.
time, there's a lot
Yes.
going on.
Lots of preparation needed so that we can move ahead.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, when those larger, well, when all bills come through, they're analyzed first by Chris and then by Roger. Ron sees them, and then I see them. So they have plenty of scrutiny. And I will say, when Chris goes through, it's line by line, and she read check marks every single thing. So we really have a lot of people watching to make sure that those expenditures are valid. All right, let's move on then to item 9, interlocal Pine Lake Railroad Crossing.
Okay, I'll give you a quick update. On Pine Lake itself, OPPD has installed the new crossing for the railroad tracks there. The signals and equipment are up, but they are not operational. The city is still working on the paving of the street. The anticipation is the end of this construction season, hopefully before Thanksgiving, that would be open. And as in the past, the RTSD had budgeted money for the Pine Lake Road crossing to the tune of $600,000. The city have not yet been billed by OPPD. So before you today is the standard annual interlocal agreement authorizing the expenditure of up to that $600,000 when properly invoiced from the city of Lincoln for that railroad work. It's been a long time coming.
Any questions regarding this?
So
Southeast Lincoln will be glad to see Pine Lake Road back open. Also had the opportunity to see the new joint police fire station that's right near that crossing location, and it's very impressive. So a lot of improvements along that corridor.
I should also say that this interlocal agreement, the motion, if you chose to approve, would be to authorize the board chair and executive director to sign that. The document then still needs to be forwarded on to the city council for their authorization for the mayor to sign before that expenditure could be made. So,
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to authorize the chair to sign the interlocal agreement and forward to the city council. Call the roll, please.
Best,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Shore.
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Item 10, interlocal from North 48th Street. with
I would ask
BNSF.
Neil Vockel, who is city engineering project manager, to come up and give us a quick update on that project. This also is one of those annual agreements where the RTSD is cost sharing in that study. And we had one last year, but work didn't get done and we didn't get billed. So the interlocal is back in there again for the money to do that. With that, Neil, would you give us an update, please?
Yeah, we've been working with a consultant for them to evaluate the intersection at 148th and Cornhusker, along with the potential roadway improvements along 48th Street, and how that would impact the bridge. We had a pretty large group get together to brainstorm options, whether that would be realigning the existing bridge, building a roadway bridge over the existing railroad, or a number of different options. The consultant, we met with them last week, and they've narrowed it down to about 7 to 10 options, and then they will continue to look at costs and impacts and whether or not future designs will assist with the future city plans for 48th Street. The idea then is for them to come to us with a cost estimate for about 3 options, so that when we're preparing the city budget later this fall, we can more accurately assign a budget to a future 48th Street improvement project.
Do you have any idea with regards to the timeline for the improvements in that area?
So I believe I'd have to look at, see what the 48th Street budget, the project is included, probably 2025 might be a good estimate.
I think it just entered into the 6-year program for the city's projects.
All right, any questions? All right.
For clarification, when you look at your budget, there's $100,000 budgeted for the underpass crossing. This interlocal agreement is for $115,750. There's an additional $15,750 for the aerial imagery that was done last year to help prepare and get ready for 33rd and Cornhusker. That would be taken out of miscellaneous engineering, just so for clarity. Okay.
I would assume this would need a similar motion to direct the chair to sign to forward on to
To
mayor's
the
office.
city, and then it'd have to go on to the council for approval.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Flowerday?
Yes.
Shore?
Yes.
Best?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much for that update. Item 11, 33rd and Cornhusker. Several
Project
references to-
manager Chris Humphrey will come forward and give us an update on that.
Good morning, Chris Humphrey, RTSD Project Manager. I'm just here to give you an update since the board last met in early June. June 27th, we held a public open house meeting, and that was attended by almost 200 people, so it was a pretty good turnout. We got about 163 comments. From that, a lot of the concerns that we heard from the citizens were in regards to property impacts, low-income population impacts, cost, traffic, just how everything moved in the area. So after taking a look at all of those public comments that we received and incorporating agency comments that we have and just a conceptual technical review of all the environmental impacts such as parks or wetlands or the low-income populations, we took a look at all of that and recommended Pell Modified C as the proposed preliminary preferred alternative. Now, even though that was the recommendation to move forward into the NEPA document with that as the proposed preliminary preferred alternative, I would just want to make it clear that all 7 alternatives that were at the public meeting are still on the table. They're still in consideration. Once we enter into NEPA, which we're working with the Nebraska Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration on getting that class of action assigned, then we will be able to start reviewing the reasonableness or the unreasonableness and the Tier 2 screening, which is kind of our last tier screening that we did in the Pell study. And once we are able to start eliminating or dismissing those alternatives, we can, again, start filtering down to that one final alternative and then really start moving forward with preliminary engineering and really more in-depth environmental analysis on that. So we're still planning on having all that dismissal of alternatives completed this year, and then early next year have another public open house meeting just to let everybody know kind of what the results of that screening process is and where we are on the project.
Questions?
So by the end of the year, then, we will narrow the field down to one.
That's our goal. So so right now we've submitted paperwork to NDOT. They will review that paperwork and submit it to FHWA, and then the goal is to have a NEPA class of action. Right now, we're assuming that to be an environmental assessment, which, if you guys remember, there's kind of 3 different levels of environmental review. There's an environmental impact statement, which is kind of the highest level. There's an environmental assessment, which is the middle level, and then categorical exclusion, which is the lowest level. We were thinking that this one will probably be an environmental assessment. And with that, typically with environmental assessments, you would be able to focus on one proposed action, one proposed alternative, along with the no action alternative. With the EIS, you pretty much have to do a preliminary analysis of all reasonable alternatives that are on the table.
And that might add additional delays and possible costs to the project, should we have to go that route.
It would be, an EIS would add additional time just because of the more intense screening that would need to go through, a little bit more reviews and the process that you have to follow.
There's certain reasonings you're using the word preliminary, proposed preliminary preferred, or maybe I said that backwards.
Yes.
Did that
Yeah.
very well.
Don't ask me to say an S tongue twister, but I could do the P's. The proposed preliminary preferred alternative, and so that's kind of a technical language that's used in the environmental phase of the project for these federal funded projects.
By engineers.
Yeah.
I should have opened up and with just some words of appreciation of board participation over the course of this summer, and thanking the public, and thanking our consultant, Olson, and thanking our advisory committee members. I'm excited that we are where we are today and able to make this recommendation to NDOT and FHWA. Without their participation and their input, we wouldn't have the information, the data to probably get us to that point. So publicly, I want to thank the community for participating, getting us to this point. We're excited in that moving ahead and being able to get back out to another public meeting after the first of the year to let them know the results of all their work and how we got perhaps to that recommended solution. So.
And Roger, while we're discussing this, would you like to provide an update regarding the meeting with Senator Fisher's staff?
Sure, I was going to do that earlier, actually, later. On August 22nd, President Shore and myself had a chance to visit with Senator Fisher's staff, Paul. And
President Shore
Yeah, I
all
think
week.
president. Yeah,
She's going to be President Shore all week now.
We'll live on.
We were able to present 33rd and Cornhusker project to Senator Fisher's staff, legislative staff, and the goal really was letting them know about the project, its importance, all of the things it does, and keeping them keyed in as upcoming federal grants perhaps are available, making sure that our delegation is also aware of the project, and they perhaps can be significant help on down the road, because one of the big steps as we go on into final NEPA and preliminary engineering is looking at grants and additional federal funding that can help assist on this project. I was also able in May, late May, I met with representatives of Congressman Fortenberry's office as well to go over the same project, keying them in. Our congressional delegation was key in helping get additional federal funding for the Antelope Valley project as we went through that, and I think we have the same opportunities for that to occur with this project, so we will keep them in. I really appreciate Deb Shore's help and assistance in that, and we'll keep them up to speed.
Appreciate you keeping us informed about those developments as well, because we certainly could use all the assistance those folks can provide. That's a big deal.
Chris, you provided this. Do you want to just touch base really?
Yeah, that's just a fact sheet for you guys. It basically says the status report I just gave, and then just information. I plan on sending that electronically to the board as well, and
The advisory board.
RTSD board. The advisory group will be getting a separate email this afternoon, just letting them know of the status report that was given to the board today.
All right. Any other questions regarding that project? Thank you very much, Chris. Report of project and crossing updates.
Before we go there, with permission for the board, I'd like to step back 1 second to item 7, which was the consideration of the FY 19-20 budget. And just for purposes of the minutes and accurately having things reflected, I simply wanted to remind that within that budget approval from June, the board also approved and passed the additional 1% lid authorization. It's important that that information is in the minutes as that information goes to the state auditor. So That is in the budget that you prepared. You did vote and approve that in June. Okay. All right. Report on project and crossing updates. I do have a few. The Rock Island Jamaica Trail North Connection Bridge, they will be advertising that for bids tomorrow. The goal is to open those bids on October 16th, hoping to be able to sign a contract in December to move ahead with that project with an anticipated completion date in September of 2020. They've left the start date somewhat open to try to provide additional flexibility for the contractors. And if a contractor has more flexibility on when he can start, perhaps the bids might be lower. If you remember, the cost estimates were over our budgeted. And since that time, the Parks Department has continued to really work hard. They have got an additional $100,000 donation and grant from Shields. They also have a $50,000 donation from the Krieger Foundation. They currently have two additional $200,000 grant requests out, one to Kiewit Foundation, the other one to BNSF. Both of those organizations, I understand, ask Lincoln to make that request, so I'm hopeful that that will come in. All of that being said, they were about $250,000 short of the actual grants in place. This would go a long ways to cover those, and even if those do not come in, the Parks Department still has that shortfall covered within their contingencies and would be able to financially move ahead on that project. And the interlocal agreement between the RTSD and the Parks Department on that project was approved in June, and the City Council approved that July 8th. So I would expect if they get good bids, we would see an invoice on that before long. Also, the RTSD and the city, both LTU and Parks, are working together to get pedestrian way crossings or sidewalks across Old Cheney near 6th Street as you leave the city and go into Wilderness Park. That had been an area that's been minus sidewalks for a long, long time, been working a long time. FHU is assisting. We have preliminary draft plans drawn, and those are currently being reviewed by BNSF Railroad to see if they're ready to move ahead. Other crossing updates. If you have been out and about, BNSF replaced the crossings along Highway 2 at 48th Street. That was primarily just the crossing replacement. At 27th and Highway 2, there's a new crossing. I think that area of roadway and railroad track is as smooth as it's been in 30 or 40 years. But that was a great...
Yoo-hoo. It was exciting to see those improvements completed.
That was a great effort between the railroad working to fix the tracks, the city hiring a contractor to do some major paving repair, and city's maintenance forces getting in and doing some things that we couldn't get a contractor to do. And it all worked. We actually got in and got out a couple of days early. We were a day or two late for school starting, but thankfully that's finally done. I would also say, I mentioned earlier, the RTSD has signed an agreement with BNSF to replace the crossing at Adams Street at 35th Street. I don't know when the railroad will start on that, but that's another agreement that's in place, and hopefully they'll get to that before winter. On August 5th, city staff and myself met with the Union Pacific Railroad on Northwest 12th. There are several crossings on Northwest 12th north of the airport exit. The city has done some temporary repairs on those crossings, and a temporary repair to add some sidewalk material along the east side of 12th across one of those tracks. We're still waiting to hear back from the railroad on whether or not those tracks need to stay in service, or perhaps could they be removed. If removed, the RTSD would certainly help pay for that removal and the pavement restoration. If they can't be removed, then would cost share with Union Pacific on replacing those crossings that they need to do. And then I did also mention the North Lincoln Quiet Zone reaffirmation has been completed, and that paperwork signed by the city and sent in. Those are the updates I would have. I'd answer any questions you might have about anything else, project-wise.
I think the summary would be that the RTSD has been very busy in the last quarter.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Roger regarding projects? Okay, if not, item 13, consideration of small contract authority resolution. And Bill, you're joining us on this one.
I just would open up and simply say, to this point in time, other than board action, there is no authority to enter into small contracts or miscellaneous contracts periodically, with the exception being for those crossing improvements. You in the past had authorized the board president and the RTSD executive to sign those agreements, provided the money was there to do that. And occasionally, circumstances come up where we need to do some work, and what Bill has drafted is a resolution for your consideration that would allow the board to delegate its contract authority with certain conditions to the board president and the executive director. Doesn't happen too often, but occasionally does happen. I might turn it over to Bill. There are some conditions in here that need to be met. If you want to cover a few more of those. And
Sure. Roger, Bill Cudel at Crosby Gunzel Law Firm. And Roger, as he indicated appropriately, this board has in the past, and it is a continuing resolution authorizing the board president and the executive director to enter into contracts for crossing improvements. This is a little bit of an expansion of that authority that's being sought here, and certainly there's no legal requirement that this board do this. It's mainly, in my mind, from comments with Roger, is for administrative efficiency reasons. When this board meets regularly on a quarterly basis, there may be instances where a contract comes up that may be relatively de minimis, that maybe should be approved, and rather than wait till the next scheduled meeting or schedule a special meeting for board approval, that we seek some continuing authority authorizing the board president and the executive director, if they both agree, to enter into contracts. There are qualifications on this written into here, and these are built from me with discussions with Roger. One, this would be confined to engineers that we have pre-qualified and to do business with us on a continuing basis. That the financial impact on the RTSD is $25,000 or less. That the fees associated are fully supported under the existing budget, and that the copy of the executed contract is certainly brought to this board at the next scheduled meeting, whether it be a regular or special meeting. So it'd be those conditions with respect to authority for approval of authorizing this board president and executive director to approve those small contracts.
an example just recently that really pushed this for me is the moving ahead with the plans to put in the pedestrian crossing at 6th and Old Cheney. While that had been on the radar in the past, it really resurrected itself with the 14th and Old Cheney project, and Parks Department needed to move ahead. They didn't have money to do that. Fortunately, in this case, city engineering was able to find some money and entered into that contract. But that contract to do the preliminary work was certainly less than $25,000. That would be the kind of thing that might come up, something unexpected that's consistent with the work that the RTSD does, but it's just not convenient, first of all, to call another board meeting to approve a contract or to wait till the next board meeting to do that. But again, this is something I think that might be good. I might also say that this is patterned very closely to the delegation of authority that the City of Lincoln and the Mayor's Office currently has delegated to their directors. They can sign contracts under $25,000. County Board does not have and has not delegated that authority to anyone, so I don't presume to automatically believe that this board wants to do the same thing. But we wanted to bring it to you for discussion and consideration.
And the county board, of course, does operate under different statutes, and it would be prohibited under Nebraska law for us to delegate. But this solution would be a rarity. I mean, maybe once a year. It's not something that's
Once or twice, you would expect, our goal is to anticipate work coming up and be prepared and bring them to the board. So fairly unique and fairly rarely. If it become a rule, then maybe the board ought to say, no, we don't want you to do that anymore.
And you said this is patterned after something that the city does. Something similar is in place for the District Energy Corporation.
I was just going to ask that.
Okay, go, yeah.
Well, no, go ahead. I think you're
It's the
saying
same thing. It was determined over a period of time, somewhat cumbersome when you have a governing board that meets quarterly, and there are occasions that arise where contracts need to be signed in a more timely fashion. I know in that format that the executive director notifies the board that the contract has been signed, and I think we would probably institute a similar policy so everyone would be notified, even though it would be on the next agenda, they'd be notified at the time.
my only question, just because it's come up before with the District Energy Corporation, is what about multi-year contracts? Are any of the contracts that you ever signed, do they ever go beyond a single year? Because if so, we're sort of tying the hands of future boards here.
We have done that. In fact, the current contract with our consultant for 33rd and Cornhusker is almost a 3-year, it is a 3-year contract. And we've tried, and
Well, I will say, while we've had a long-term contract, we've had those conditions on those long-term contracts be that there may be some budgetary restrictions on that. The funding needs to be there, and it's not going to be, we're not tying the hands of this board on a long-term basis budgetarily with respect to that. But there are some projects here that I think that Roger is involved with that have contracts that we know today are going to be longer than a single year. So one of two things happens. We either renew the contract. Often we see that through the interlocal agreements where we have these annually. You approved a couple of those today, but also through the contracts with the engineers. We have conditions on with those engineers that budget needs to be there, funding needs to be there in future years before we're obligated on that.
You don't see any issue, Deb. I'm leaning on your experience here, and you.
I don't, and I think the other thing that's key is it's for things that are already within the mission and within the budget.
Okay.
And
We're good.
to have that flexibility, and Roger said if it becomes a normal operating procedure, then we need to reevaluate how we're operating. But I see it as a rarity, and the opportunity to notify the board immediately is.
With that understanding, I would move that we approve this agreement.
Second.
All right, any additional comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Flowerday?
Yes.
Shore?
Yes.
Best?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. A final item, non-agenda items. Are there any items that are not on the agenda? Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? All right, seeing no one, I will note that our next meeting is being held on December 2nd in this same room at 11 o'clock.
I move adjournment.
Second.
Motion is to adjourn. Call the roll, please.
Where did I go? Christensen?
Yes.
Flowerday?
Yes.
Shore?
Yes.
Best?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.